Today, I'm going to be talking to you about why someone might want to go to university, what university involves, and what makes Oxford different to other universities and why someone might want to choose it when they're making their applications. So, first of all, the aim of this talk is to give everyone an opportunity to think and learn about university as a future possibility. We want everyone, no matter where they come from, no matter what their background is, to know that university is an option for you and for you to be able to explore whether it is the right option for you. We also want to give you the opportunity to find out more about Oxford specifically. We know that there can be a lot of rumours and myths around Oxford, that sometimes it can feel a bit confusing, and so we hope in this talk to give you more understanding of what Oxford is all about. I also want to give you the chance to see a little bit of Somerville. Unfortunately, as this is a virtual presentation, I can't give you a tour of Somerville, but there are plenty of pictures throughout this presentation. There's also a 360 virtual tour on the Oxford University website, and there will be a link later on in this presentation to that. We also want to give you the chance to ask plenty of questions. If you do have any questions about anything that I mentioned during this talk, then please feel free to drop me or my colleague an email. We have an email address which will be coming up later in the presentation as well. You also have the opportunity to chat to some of our current students, because we have a page on our website where you can chat to our current students by setting up an online profile and sending them messages through our website. So do check that out. The link will be at the end of the talk. First of all then, why might someone want to go to university? Well, we think the most important thing when you're thinking about going to university, choosing which university you go to and what you study, is that you want to learn more about your favourite subject. It's really important that you choose something to study that you enjoy, because most people will be studying only one or maybe two subjects at university for at least 3 years, if not more. And so you really want to make sure that you're enjoying that subject, because otherwise, first of all, you probably won't have a very good time at university, because a lot of university life is spent studying that subject. And secondly, you probably won't do very well at the end of your time at university when you take your exams, because if you don't enjoy the subject that you're studying, then you probably won't want to revise for it or study anything about it, and so you won't work very hard and therefore won't do very well. So that's the most important thing. But there are other reasons as well why someone might want to go to university. For example, to gain internationally recognised qualifications. So a degree is the qualification that you get at the end of your time at university. And these are internationally recognised, which means that you have loads of really exciting career opportunities from that qualification, both in the UK and abroad. So, as I just said, you can become more attractive to employers through a university degree. The figures really suggest that in the 21st century, in today's society, you do need to be more highly educated, more highly skilled than other people if you do want to get those top paying jobs. Graduates on average do earn significantly more than people who haven't graduated from university. So that's worth considering when you're thinking about whether to go to university or not. But it's not all about getting a job, getting lots of money. It's also about the opportunity to meet lots of new people and just experience student life, living away from home, gaining a bit more independence. People come to university from all across the UK and indeed across the world. And so it's a fantastic opportunity to meet lots of new people from all different backgrounds. And because there are so many people at university, it's a great chance to make new friends, people who share your interests, the things that you like, the things that you enjoy. And so it really gives you a taste of the wider world, broadening your horizons. And at the same time, it's a really nice stepping stone, actually, between where you're currently living perhaps at home with parents or carers or supporters, and perhaps having some things done for you, and what might be called the real adult world, where you have to do all of that for yourself. because at university, most people choose to live at university in their university accommodation, but only during the term time, which means that you will still be spending a lot of time living at home if that's an option for you. And you will have to learn how to do some things for yourself, like a bit more budgeting, maybe doing your laundry if you've never done that before. But you will also still be looked after in plenty of ways. There are staff available to help you both academically and personally. And if you're living in university accommodation, then you will generally be sharing a kitchen and bathrooms with other people, and those are cleaned by university employed members of staff. You might want to think about applying to high demand universities in particular. These include the Russell Group, which includes Oxford and Cambridge. And the reason you might want to do that is because they really do offer a top-rated education, and they will be far more challenging and stimulating and therefore rewarding when you're studying your subject. They offer a fantastic array of facilities such as sports grounds, libraries, museums, and they also offer a great chance for a good social life because they have such great facilities, and because as they're more high demand, that means that more students apply to them from all across the country, all across the world, as I said. And so you will be able to meet and mingle with loads of different people who will be starting all kinds of clubs and societies and things to get involved in. And of course, as I've mentioned, you also get excellent career prospects. Degrees from high demand universities are generally better recognised and more highly favoured by employers. Employers do look at which university you have your degree from. So just to emphasise that you don't necessarily have to study the subject that is specifically related to a job in order to get a really good job. This is a pie chart which shows the graduate destinations of people who all studied history in the same year at Cambridge. And so you can see from this that straight after graduating, a lot of them did go into further study, including legal training and teacher training. So those are training for more vocational jobs. But they also went into plenty of fields, including a lot of highly paid, perhaps office and corporate jobs, such as banking and investment, communications, management consulting, publishing and media. They also went into various social and more charitable sectors. They also, some of them went straight into the legal sector, as well as some of them training to be lawyers, which shows again that you don't have to study law at undergraduate level, which is the first degree that you can get in order to become a lawyer. You can study something else that you really enjoy, get a really good degree, and then do your conversion course, your qualifying exams, and become a lawyer that way. And that way you learn the more practical skills, having gained more transferable skills in a job, in a subject that you enjoy. So more about how university works then. These are some images which show different ways in which universities teach their students. So first of all, top left is lectures. And that, as you can see from the picture, is where generally you'll have a lecturer, or they might be called a tutor or a professor, depending on the university, standing at the front of a room full of students in front of a whiteboard or a PowerPoint presentation, talking at the students for about an hour or so on average. And the students are all furiously taking notes, right, whether it's on paper or on laptops. And that's a great way for them to get their foundational level knowledge and their basic understanding of that topic, which they can then use to go away and do their own further research based on. Most universities will then teach their students in smaller group classes called seminars, which you can see on the top right. And that is a way in which students can start to discuss amongst their peers and amongst academic experts in their fields about the subject that they've learnt about in lectures and that they've done their own studying based on. Science students also have the chance to have practicals or laboratory labs work. That's a chance for them to gain more hands-on practical skills where they are overseen by, again, experts in their field, experts in the research that's going on, and to get involved in first-hand research within their field. Oxford and Cambridge do all of these things, but they also teach more generally in a slightly different way, which at Oxford is called a tutorial and at Cambridge is called a supervision. And as you can see from the picture, that's generally one tutor and 2 students on average. And that means you get a far more personalised, intense way of teaching, but it also means you get really personal feedback and support, and it's much more of an academic conversation and discussion with someone who's probably a world expert in their field if they're at Oxford and Cambridge. And that's a great way to really explore the subject in depth with people who know an awful lot about it and to really enjoy talking about the subject that you love. University does set work in a slightly different way to school. Generally, you are given a piece of work. If you're at Oxford and Cambridge and you're doing tutorials or supervisions, then you'll be set a piece of work about a week before your tutorial. And that will be an essay with a reading list if you're a humanities student and a problem sheet if you're a sciences student. So for a humanities student, you will go away and you will choose what to read on the reading list that you've been set and then write an essay based on the question that you've been given. For a sciences student, you'll generally have more lectures than you would as a humanities student and more hands-on classes. And based on those, you would then fill in a problem sheet. And for both essays and problem sheets, you would hand that in the day before your tutorial or potentially bring it to your tutorial and then discuss it there, rather than at school where you're having a class and then being set a piece of homework to see whether you've understood it. And that's why I've put the middle picture in, because the vast majority of students' time at university, especially if they're a humanities student where they have fewer lectures, is spent in independent study, as well as social activities, of course. So they are expected to be able to manage their own time, which is a great skill that you slowly develop as you go throughout university life. But you are not quite so in quite such a structured school environment anymore. But it's not all work and no play. There is plenty of time to get involved in social activities as well. At Oxford, there are over 400 university societies, and there is something to get involved in no matter what you're interested in and no matter what level you're interested in doing it at. So for sport, for example, most of the colleges, and I'll explain what an Oxford College is in a minute, most of the colleges have their own sports teams, and then the university has its own versions of those teams as well. Colleges are far more relaxed and social, so if you are interested in starting something for the first time or doing it quite socially rather than intensely, then you can get involved at college level. But if you are keen on something that you've been doing for a long time at school and you really want to play to a high standard and perhaps go into tournaments against other universities, then you can join the university team. There is also the opportunity to get involved in all the facilities that the City of Oxford has to offer, because as a university within a city, we are spread out across the city, and that means that students can access the city facilities like pubs, clubs, bars, theatres, ice skating rink, shopping centres, anything that you can think of. There's generally something for everyone. The way that people get the chance to explore what societies are out there is in something called Freshers' Fair, which you can see on the bottom left. That's where university societies all set up a stall arranged in a big hall or a series of halls. And so when the freshers, as we call the first years, when they arrive, they get the chance to go into this big hall and see all the different stalls, sign up to lots of different things if they're interested in those societies. They'll probably not end up going to half those societies, they'll just get emails from them for 3 years, but it's a great opportunity to really see what is out there and what they might be able to start getting involved with during their time at university. At this point, I'd love to encourage you to pause the video and to have a guess at what societies these images represent. All of them represent a different society that you could get involved with at Oxford. Some of them are a bit more weird and wacky than others. The bottom two images go together to show the same society. The rest of them are all different. Some of them are easier to guess than others. So have a try and then I'll reveal the answers. So if you've had the chance to guess, the first one, the top left, is the Oxford University Tea Appreciation Society, which is basically where students get together, they drink some fancy teas, they appreciate those teas, they are very British, but anyone can get involved, of course. The second one, the top right, is Quidditch. Now, as hard as that photographer has tried, they don't actually fly, sadly. Quidditch, for those who don't know, is the sport that they play in the Harry Potter books and films. In the films and the books, they actually fly on broomsticks in the sky, but sadly, at Oxford, they just run around with sticks between their legs, which is quite interesting to watch. But it's very competitive, and there's actually a team at every university. So it is something that they can get involved with and play against other universities. The third logo is actually the Oxford University Student Radio, which I like to put as an example of how you can get involved in a society during your time at university, which you might then use to lead you on to a job in the future, perhaps if you wanted to become a radio presenter, for example. The centre image is the Oxford Doctor Who Society, where they just get together, they get excited about Doctor Who, maybe dress up in Doctor Who costumes. So that's really just an opportunity to get together and share an interest. The middle right image is the Oxford University Dance Society, so perhaps a less weird one there, but if you are interested in getting involved in dance, whatever kind of dance it is, whatever kind of level you're interested in, then there is something for you at Oxford and plenty of other universities. Bottom left, perhaps an easier one to guess, is the Oxford University Italian Society. So if there are students who are studying Italian or interested in Italian or just really like pizza, then they can go and join the Italian Society. And finally, the bottom right image is the Oxford University Octopush Club. Now, the image doesn't make it very clear, but that is actually underwater hockey, where they use small sticks to push the puck along the bottom of the swimming pool. So just an example of loads of different clubs, and these are just a few of the many clubs and societies you can get involved with during your time at university. So, some concerns that people might have about going to university in Oxford. I've talked about all of the good things, but people might be worried about particular aspects of going to university, and perhaps particular Oxford and Cambridge, which together are known as Oxbridge. So the first one you can see there that some people might think is, I'm quite scared to move away from home. You know, I've talked about how positive it is, getting independence, but that might be quite daunting for you to think about having to gain independence and move out. You might not want to move away from your parents or whoever is supporting you. But as I mentioned before, because you're only having to live at university, or you can only live at university during the university term times, actually you still have a lot of time spent at home. So this is particularly the case for Oxford and Cambridge because our terms are 8 weeks long, whereas the majority of university terms are 12 to 14 weeks long. And so that means, if you do the maths, that our vacations, as we call our holidays, are 6 weeks at Christmas and Easter and 3 or 4 months at summer. So you still have plenty of time to be at home. And also you can go home and see the people that you love whenever you'd like, and they can come and visit you too. So it's not the case that you're stuck at university for the whole term time. You can choose to go home, and that's particularly easy given that you are doing a lot more independent study, so you manage when you are studying and when you are not. A couple of concerns I hear particularly about Oxford and Cambridge from people are It's only for private school kids, and after that, and I think what people might be thinking if they say that is everyone at Oxford and Cambridge is posh. My accent probably doesn't help with this, but it's really not the case. It is a myth that it's only for private school kids, or the majority of people there are from private schools. In our last admission cycle, we made offers of those UK applicants we made offers to, 69% of them were from state schools. So 69% of our UK offer holders are from state schools. So I hope that that kind of dispels the rumour automatically that everyone is posh, because although there are, of course, some posh people at Oxford and plenty of other universities, there are also far more non-posh, normal, you might say, people. A lot of people are worried about the pressure academically at university. If you're only studying one subject for at least 3 years, then you might be worried that you might fail at that subject. But it's really not the case that university, including Oxford and Cambridge, they're not sink or swim institutions. So there is plenty of opportunity for you to go to your tutors, your lecturers, and other members of staff at the university and explain that you are struggling. And particularly Oxford and Cambridge, it's really easy for them to pick up if you're struggling and offer you more support because of these small group classes called tutorials or supervisions, as I talked about earlier. Because if there are only 2 of you and 1 tutor in a room, then that tutor will very quickly pick up if you are struggling, if you're not making deadlines for the work, or if your work isn't up to the standard that it should be at, then they won't just kick you out. They will offer you lots of support and more personalised feedback so that you can learn how to improve and to gain the skills that you need. It's too expensive is another one that I hear quite a lot. There are some rumours, I think, that Oxford and Cambridge charge more in the way of tuition fees than other universities. That's not the case. All universities charge the same tuition fees. I'll talk a bit about finance in a minute. There is also plenty of financial support available. And finally, for Oxford and Cambridge in particular, just a general impression that, oh, I'd never get in, Oxford's not for me, I'm not for Oxford, I'm not that Oxbridge type. I hear those things all the time, and generally they're not an accurate representation of that student or of the university, because all we're looking for is people who are really passionate about their subject and are on track to do well in it because they're really passionate about it. And so we're not looking for particular backgrounds, particular school types. We are just looking for that enthusiasm and that potential to thrive in the particular way that we teach Oxford and Cambridge, which might not be right for everyone. And that doesn't make people less intelligent if the way that we teach isn't right for everyone. We do have these very personalised tutorial system, and we also examine mostly based on end of course exams rather than assessing based on coursework. There is some coursework in many courses, but a lot of it is exam based, and so that might not be right for you, and that's fine. It's worth thinking about as well when you make your application. But if you're just thinking generally, oh, I'd never get in without any real reasoning to back that up, then you might want to reconsider if you're just assuming something based on rumours you've heard. So I said I would come back to talk more about finances, and we really want to encourage you to know that there is support available, that financial concerns should not be a barrier to you coming to university, particularly Oxford. There is plenty of support. So the tuition fees, which I mentioned earlier, all universities charge the same tuition fees, which covers, of course, the cost of your teaching and studying at university. And the government offers a loan which covers the entirety of that tuition fee. And that money goes straight from the government to the university. So it's not a sum of money that you ever have to see or touch or deal with in any way. It goes straight across. The government then also offers a maintenance loan, and this is based on household income. So there is a set minimum level which everyone gets, but then on top of that, some people will get more than others based on what their household income is. And for both of those things, I know loans can be quite scary for a lot of people. They are a very, very safe form of loan because you are only expected to pay it back once you start earning over a minimum threshold of salary. And once you start earning over that threshold, then you are only paying back a set percentage of your income. And therefore, you will never be asked to pay back something that you can't afford because your repayments are based on how much you're earning. On top of the government loans, Oxford also offers bursaries and scholarships. Bursaries are basically free money that the university gives you in order that you can have a really good time at university, as well as just being able to kind of scrape by based on the tuition and maintenance loans that you've been given. We want to make sure that you can afford to live and thrive and get involved in things that other people are getting involved in. That's based on your household income. So when you apply for the government loans, then we will automatically consider whether you're eligible for a bursary and offer you that. We also offer academic scholarships once you arrive based on how well you perform generally in your first year exams. On top of this, Oxford has a lot of money, as you may have heard, and therefore we can afford to subsidise your living costs. This means that we basically offer you discounts on the rent that you pay when you're living in university accommodation and on the food that you get in the dining hall. All the colleges are catered, so you can get food in all of them. I mentioned colleges a few times. So how Oxford and Cambridge work is that they're both collegiate universities. So the yellow smiley face is meant to represent the student. And the student is a member of their subject department, which oversees their course and runs their lectures. But the student is also a member of a college. And there are over 30 colleges which make up Oxford University. And they are where students will live. It's the heart of their academic and personal social life during their time at Oxford. So you might describe it as like a giant halls of residence or a mini campus. It's generally a series of buildings, often set around one or more green square spaces called quads because they have 4 sides, Latin word for 4. And so that is where students will live. It's where they will socialise. It's where they will eat. It's where they will do quite a lot of their own independent studying, and it's often where their tutorials are based. They all have their own gym, and a lot of them own sports fields just outside the city centre. And so it's where students will make the majority of their friends. So as well as making friends through their course and through university societies that they've got involved in, because most subjects are available at most colleges, that means that you have students there from a range of different subjects. And so you can meet people from all different subjects, all different backgrounds, and socialise and live with them. It's a really easy way to make friends as well. It really narrows down the 3,300 students that come to Oxford every year into just a small pool. So for example, at Somerville, we have 120 students in a year at Somerville. So that immediately makes it easier and more manageable to start making your friends. I can't, of course, show you around a student bedroom, but this is an image of one of the bedrooms at Somerville. They're all pretty standard: bed, desk, chest of drawers or wardrobe, chair. Some of them have a sink in them. At Somerville, you don't have to share a room with someone else, although a lot of our rooms you do share bathrooms. We have some ensuite accommodation blocks and some where you're sharing bathrooms. All of them have kitchens in, so although every college is catered, as I said, and has its own dining hall, you can also cook for yourself if you prefer. And the link there, if you type that into your browser, then you can see a 360 virtual tour of various aspects of our college if you'd like to see more of Somerville. And there are lots of other colleges on that website as well if you'd like to look around but can't make it to one in person. So a bit more about applying to Oxford then. This is a little timeline of the various stages of the application process. As I said, the first thing to do is to choose your course. So thinking about what you're doing right now at school, some university courses require a certain combination of A-level subjects. So that means you need to think about whether the degree that you're applying to asks you for specific subjects and whether you're actually studying those subjects. But it's also we're thinking about the reverse. What subjects am I currently studying? What am I most interested in out of those? What could I potentially study at university based on my current subjects and based on my interests? Prepares you for university education. You're already starting to get a bit more of that independent skill, independent study style when you're in sixth form than you were getting beforehand. And so you can start to figure out what style of learning suits you best, and what subjects you enjoy the most. So how you would like to be taught and how you'd like to learn at university is important when you're thinking about the type of course and the type of university, and what you might want to apply to. So when you're choosing a course, as I keep saying, choose a course you'll enjoy. That's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, most top jobs don't require a specific degree. They just require a good degree from a good university, and they will then look at that and know that you've gained a lot of transferable skills, such as presentations, looking at lots of data or information and condensing it into a digestible format, as you do when you write an essay based on reading. And those employers will know that based on those transferable skills, you're really able to take up the job that they want you to do and learn it fast and have the basic foundational skills that you would need in order to learn the specific skills of that job. Of course, it is worth mentioning, though, that some careers do require a specific degree. So if you want to become a doctor, an engineer, or an architect, for example, you do have to study the relevant subject in order to gain those skills. When you're doing your research about different courses, you should really have a chance to look into what courses are out there that you might never have heard before. You might never have had the chance to study at school. So I was a student at Somerville myself until mid-2018, and I studied classical archaeology and ancient history, which was certainly something that I'd never heard of before. I'd never had the chance to study it at school. But I knew that I was interested in ancient history based on things that I'd done outside of school, watched and read and engaged in. And so when I found this course online, I just discovered that it sounded perfect for me. And thankfully, I was right. And so you should really have a chance, you should really look at whether there are courses out there which would be perfect for you, even though you're maybe not currently studying them at school. So we talked about choosing your course. You can then choose a college, or you can make an open application, which means that you say, I know I want to go to Oxford University, but I don't know which college I want to go to, and that's fine, we'll choose a college for you. Everyone loves the college they end up at, and about a third of our applicants who do choose a college end up at a different college to the one that they applied to in the first place anyway. There's a YouTube link there if you want to find out more about what colleges are and how you would choose them. It's then worth checking whether you have to take an admissions test and what the registration deadline is for that, because you have to register through your school separately to your UCAS application, which is number 4. The UCAS application deadline for Oxford, Cambridge, and some early entry courses such as medicine, veterinary science, and dentistry. The deadline is significantly earlier than for other universities. It's the 15th of October. So your school or sixth form probably has an earlier deadline than that for you to submit your application to them. And the most important thing on that is your personal statement, which we'll talk about in our application skills workshop. So it's worth looking at that. But your teachers have to write a reference for you. So you have to submit it to them early enough that they can write that before the deadline, which is the 15th of October, compared to other universities and other courses, which the deadline is the 15th of January for. But you can apply to Oxford or Cambridge. You can't apply to both in the same year. You can only apply to one. But you can make your application to them and then later, beyond the 15th of October deadline, add applications to other universities. But all of them get the same personal statements. You need to think about that when you're writing your personal statement. Cambridge then asks you for an SAQ, which is a supplementary additional questionnaire, which just gives them a bit more information about which modules you're studying so that they can maybe ask you about it at interview. You then might be asked to submit written work, particularly as a humanities student, and or you might need to take your admissions test. So for my course, for example, I didn't have to take a test, but I did have to submit 2 essays. And we're not expecting you to write something specifically for submitting it to the university. So you can just submit your 2 best essays that you've written recently at school. And they don't necessarily have to be related to the subject. If you are studying the subject currently, it's probably a good idea. But if you're not, if you're applying to something that you haven't had the chance to study before, like law or like ancient history, as I said, then you can just submit essays from other subjects. If we like all the application stages that you've done so far, we look at all of them together, then we might invite you for interview. And for Oxford, this means that you will come up for 3 days in kind of mid-December, early to mid-December. For Cambridge, you just come up for the day, or down. And you will be given at least 1 interview. Most students will have 2 at Oxford. Some of them will have far more than that. Whether you have 1 or 5 or 8, it's not representative of how well you've done in those interviews. It's just part of the admissions process. If you'd like a bit more advice on what the interview involves and how to go about preparing yourself for it and actually doing it, then some of our students at Somerville have given some advice on a video that we have put up on our YouTube channel, and the link is there if you want to have a look at that. Finally, we look at all of the stages of your application so far. That includes all the stages before the interview, as well as the interview itself. The interview isn't the kind of final hurdle you have to get over. We consider you holistically, and then we decide whether to make you an offer or not. And those offers come out in January, and they will have grade requirements, which you will then need to complete in order to fulfill your offer and get into Oxford. For humanities, the offer is generally about 3 A's for Oxford, and for sciences, it's 1 A star and 2 A's, or 2 A stars and 1 A. You should check the website to see which grades you are required to get for the subjects you're interested in and which subjects you need to have in order to apply. So what might you do now? Well, the Russell Group has a really useful website called Informed Choices, where you can look at what courses are available to you based on the subjects you're studying so far, or what subjects you need to have studied to apply for the course that you might be interested in. So that's a really useful website to check out. When you're choosing a university, you want to think about the various aspects of that university and whether they suit you. So how they teach. At Oxford and Cambridge, I've said we teach in tutorials or supervisions. Those aren't right for everyone. How much they have in the way of facilities, whether they offer you accommodation or they ask you to rent privately, whether they're a campus university where everyone's on one site, or whether they're spread out around the city, whether they're formed of colleges or like the London universities just spread out in general around the city. Where they are in the country, whether they're close to home, whether they're a bit further away, how you can get to them, how your parents or your carers or supporters can help you get to them. And finally, what the entry requirements are. So what type of qualification you need. Unfortunately, for example, Oxford and Cambridge can't really take people who have taken BTECs, or at least BTECs alone without any other qualifications alongside, just because the course material is very different to what you'd be studying during a BTEC, and the jump is really too great between them. So we're looking for A levels or IB or equivalent. You also need to look at what subjects they require you to have already and what grades you're expected to get. So think about your predicted grades, what you're expecting to get at the end of your time at school or sixth form, and whether that is reasonable to apply to those universities. Thirdly, when you're thinking about writing your personal statement, you want to engage in what we call supercurricular activities. Oxford and Cambridge are particularly interested in these compared to extracurricular activities, such as being, captain of your football team or leading your school play. We're not so interested in those. We are interested in these activities called supercurricular, which means ways that you've gone above and beyond the school curriculum. And that includes things like doing online courses, listening to podcasts, watching documentaries, reading journals, reading short introductory books, reading big books, reading newspaper articles, And we also have a resource called Oxplore, which Oxford produces. You just Google Oxplore, it will come up. And that's an online website where you can engage in various big questions as you might be asked to interview, and start to explore those by going through lots of different journal articles that have been written, quizzes, videos. There's lots of different subject areas that tie into those questions. And so you can start to explore more critical thinking around a question or around your subject. University College at Oxford also does something called Staircase 12, which again is an online resource. And that offers you the chance to look at various different resources, supercurricular activities that you could do for the subject you're interested in, including lots of reading material. So do check that out. That's the end of my talk. If you do have any questions, if anything I've said hasn't made sense or have left anything out that you were interested in or concerned about, then please do email me and my colleagues at access@sum.ox.ac.uk. We'll be really happy to answer anything that you might want to ask. No question is a stupid question at all.